The question y'all gave me is, where do I pivot on my foot? And the classical answer is on the ball of your foot. You know, your heels are the brakes, your ball is the pivot, and the toes are your step. That's one way that I learned tango. But I want to give a little bit of detail to this. Where's the ball of the foot? So the first thing I want to talk about is I want to talk about the wave of integration. And if our whole body is made out of a pulsing wave that ripples through, and if we do one thing to make a movement, then it arrests this wave. There has to be an effort and a release to really get the full range of movement. And that is really important with how you step on your feet. So I want you to look at your foot. If you can sit on a chair or wherever you are and look at your foot here. And what I want you to see is that the overall, like you can see it in the knit of my sock here, the overall shape is an up and then a down. One wave. But then as it goes down, it starts to come up again. Down, up, down. And you can see this because my foot touches the ground here at the low point. It doesn't touch the ground here, but it touches the ground here. It doesn't touch it here underneath my toe, but it touches it at the end. And so there's like a low point, a high point, a low point, a high point, and a low point. And then at the end of the foot, it turns up again. So this same thing exists from the inside of the foot to the outside. There is a wave that ripples from the low point. It goes up into the arc and then down into the low point again on the outside of the foot. So the question, where do I pivot on my foot, is a partial question. Your entire body, from your toes to your nose, every joint, every cell is involved in this pivot. And this pivot is never a steady state of where do I lock on my body and what is the exact single point that I pivot on. The pivot is in process from moving from your support to your extension, and it's somewhere in the middle. It's like an arrested sentence where you're like, and there it is. And it's that point when you're transitioning that you're holding that movement. If you stop, then both sides clamp down and you jam up and the pivot hurts. And then it takes a lot of effort to unstick it and move back into the fullness. But if you keep your fullness starting from the inside, taking your fullness all the way to the outside, then you can find the peak of that fullness and carry out a pivot. Okay, so how does that work in our step in tango? In our step in tango, we have a flexion that leads us into the front step. That front step happens on the outside of the foot, from the heel to the little toe. I roll on the outside when I plant my foot. And then as I transfer my weight transfers from my little toe over to my big toe. And as I reach the full extension on this foot, extension, that's the big toe, the inside of the foot. So as I step back with this foot, I'm looking for that big toe. So every step happens where I roll from the little toe to the big toe. And if I stop in between there to do a pivot, it's somewhere in between my heel and my big toe. And if you can find those, it separates a little, you create some space. It's not here, it's not here. It's like right up the middle, and it creates a fullness in the foot that separates so that you can find a big, wide support to pivot from.